Most forms of insurance are a scam. Proper policy design is everything when we're talking the infinite banking concept. In today's video, I'm going to break down how to read one of these policies and more importantly, what to watch out for when you're doing your own research. Here's a policy that I made up. This is similar to one of the first policies that I had on myself. And before we get started here, I just want to note that this could be an augmentation to your specific plan. If you're a securities person, you got nothing wrong, dollar cost averaging, low cost index funds, but you could use these systems as a tool to augment what you're already doing inside of your plan. So getting into the policy, we're gonna break down how to read one of these things and how I would review a policy with a client to make sure they have a full understanding of how these policies work. So when we're understanding infinite banking, there's two main columns that we have to be concerned about. The first is guaranteed, and the next is the non-guaranteed column. So we're going to go through a couple of rows here, and at the end of this, you'll have a pretty solid understanding of how to understand and read these policies and implement them into your wealth building plan. The first two columns here are very self-explanatory. It's the age and year. So that's the age of the person and the year of the policy going down until the policy's end date. The first real column that we're concerned about is the premium. So this is how much money that you're contributing per year inside your policy. You'll note here that the first year is bigger than all the other years. That is because you're allowed a one-time lump sum premium to fund your policy. And if you know my story, that's something similar to what I did. I took some contributions from my TSP. I was a former Army officer. And then my Roth IRA took from those contributions to avoid the taxes and penalties. And I used that to help me fund the one-time lump sum premium for my policy. The next column is the guaranteed cash value. So this is how much capital you actually have access to. Just to note here that all these policy values are increasing and these values never lapse. The main takeaway here is that this guaranteed column is the worst case scenario of what would happen inside of your policy. The next column is the guaranteed death benefit. So I don't plan on dying anytime soon, but one of the reasons why people love whole life so much is because you could access a portion of this death benefit early if something were to happen to you. So if I destroyed my knee during jiu-jitsu, or if I acquired some type of terminal illness or chronic illness, I could access a portion of this death benefit early under certain circumstances. Another thing to note here with this death benefit, it essentially gives you a permission slip to spend. You don't have to worry about building up to these different death benefit numbers. That's already baked into your contract in this guaranteed column. And that is the worst case scenario death benefit that will be paid into your heirs when you graduate. And if you don't have any heirs, like let's say if you're not having kids, you could put this into your trust system similar to the Rockefeller method, and that can be used to continue your legacy plan as you're going through your wealth building journey. If you know me, what I'm trying to do is be a privatized bank for the martial arts and disabled community. So then I don't have to worry about building up to these different values. This death benefit will be paid into my trust system and it'll act as a privatized bank so people could take from that bank and not have to go through the normal traditional financing routes. Now we're going to jump over to the non-guaranteed side. So the main talking point here is dividends. And this is the key takeaway here. Dividends are not guaranteed, but dividends have been paid on time with very little variance for centuries, depending on which provider that we're talking about. I also like to note here that insurance companies have been around longer than banks, depending on which provider, and banks are the largest owner of whole life policies, specifically because of the guarantees and certainties that we just talked about before. The next column to talk about is the net cash value. So this is the net cash value with the incorporation of these dividends that we just talked about before. Very similar to a brokerage account, these dividends are going to be paid inside of our policy and then reinvested. Note here that these dividends are actually a return on premium, but inside the industry, we call these a dividend. It's also important to note here that all the growth inside this policy with the incorporation of these dividends is tax-free. You could elect to receive these dividends via cash, but what's normal inside of the infinite banking practices is to reinvest these dividends inside of your whole life policy so you can continue to compound your net cash value and get more leverage into other cash flowing assets. So I just want to highlight here now some of the power of these compounding dividends. So looking at year 10 in the policy, we have roughly 433 net cash value versus 633 with the incorporation of those dividends. And then scroll down to age 65. We have about 1.2 million versus 3.7 million. So that's just highlighting the power of what happens when we reinvest those dividends inside of our policy. Again, you can receive these dividends via cash, but you're way better off to reinvest those dividends inside of your policy so you can continue to compound your net cash value. And then the final column here is our death benefit. So this is the total death benefit with the incorporation of those dividends that we just talked about before. Before we jump into how to use these policies, I want to cover a very common question that comes up is what happens if I can't make my policy premiums, or what happens if I don't want to pay this policy anymore. You see here are the first year annual requirement premiums versus the minimum required for the different sections of our policy. This first line, this 19K, is our base versus our 10-year term versus our level PUA. You'll note here that the minimum required payment is way less than the first year annual premium. So you have some flexibility on what to do when you're implementing your policy. Another concept that you could apply is what's called reduced paid up. What happens here, this happens after year 7, your death benefit will reduce to cover the premium. And the output here is essentially you have a self-contained and field system. And all the growth inside the policy will still be tax-free and you could still access that cash value. On the note of reduced paid up and paying these minimum required payments, I do want to highlight one thing. When we're analyzing how much premium we could actually put inside of our policy, the life insurance company is going to look at the first 7 years, and that is going to dictate how much capital you could put inside your policy for all the remaining years. So they're going to take an average of these first 7 years. So for example, if you only put in, let's say, half of this required premium, then that means you'd only be able to put in that 50% amount for the rest of the policy life. So that really is one of the number one mistakes that we see in the infinite banking world, is people not capitalizing on their policies. And this drags down the potential of the policy. If we're not putting as much capital as we can inside this policy, it's going to, of course, drag down the performance of the illustration. Not necessarily bad, just something you need to be cognizant about before jumping into this game. Next, we're going to jump in and analyze what you could do with one of these policies. We'll walk through a real life example on how I use this policy in my life. I mentioned before, I took some contributions from my TSP and my Roth IRA, and I used that as my one-time lump sum. And then with my policy, I had around an 85% efficiency rate, and that allowed me access to that capital right away that I deployed into different cash flow assets. Me personally, I took some of my cash value and I deployed that into different turnkey rentals. And then I stacked some private lending notes into this as well. But here's what's really cool, and this is where this concept really shines. And this is why your provider and policy design is so critical. A very common question that I get is, oh, well, if you're paying this capital, if this is your capital, then why would you pay interest on your own capital when you're leveraging that out to go get into different cash flowing assets? But here's the thing, you're not paying interest on your own capital. When you leverage this money out, your cash value stays intact. You are using the life insurance company's money as leverage into those different cash flowing assets. Your cash value continues to grow uninterrupted, even though you're leveraging into different assets. So this is the math problem that you really have to break down. Like for my example, my down payments were around 40 to 50K for those turnkey rentals. This is what you got to ask yourself. Why would I be concerned about paying 5% on a 50K down payment? That's $2,000 a year annual interest when I'm making interest and dividends tax-free at 1.2, 1.3, $1.9 million. The tax-free growth inside this policy is going to blow that efficiency out of the water compared to my previous strategy, which was to use a high-yield savings account. When I used the high-yield savings account, I would save up to 50K, but then I would lose that capital every single time that I funded a down payment for a rental property. Now I was able to contribute that capital, capture it, it continues to grow, even though I'm leveraging out capital each year to get into turnkey properties or different private lending notes. This ties into the concept of loans when we're talking these specific policies. The interest rate with these loans when you leverage your cash value is going to be about 1 to 2% less than what the actual market is. In addition, the life insurance company does not care if you pay back their loan. And this is why the total amount of death benefit that you pass on after you die is going to be the death benefit minus the outstanding leverage that you have in your system. So for example, just to be super clear, like let's say I died at year 80, I would have around $9 million of death benefit. If I had around $5 million of loans, that would still be $4 million passed on to my heirs tax-free and probate-free, which is why these policies are so powerful. The life insurance company is banking on you dying. They know you're gonna die. Everyone is going to die, and they get their money on the back end. It's important to note here, yes, you don't have to pay back those loans because the death benefit will cover it, but you can't leverage out more than your cash value. And when we're applying the practice of being your own banker, you're gonna wanna pay off that minimum interest because that interest does compound and it can get out of control. But if you're just paying that interest and keeping it intact, it could be a great way to use smart debt to compound your generational growth. Now that we broke down the overall understanding of how to read these policies, I just want to walk through the overall system so we understand it from a bird's eye view when we're implementing this. So with the generational growth cycle, we're going to apply leverage from our system. It turns out here that whole life insurance is one of the best and most optimal routes to apply leverage. And that is because of the certainties and guarantees that are baked into whole life that we just talked about. The next step is to buy cash flowing assets, and then the cash flow will pay off the interest that we take from our leverage system. This is something that I really struggled with when I was getting started. My number one question that I had was, okay, I have my banking system, I have my banking foundation. Now, what do I do with it? And that's really where I bridge the gap with the second pillar, which is using the power of networking. So whether you're trying to get into real estate, creative finance, private lending notes, land, I have a lot of connections that could save you a lot of time, and you could be taken care of from step one all the way to the end inside of one system, which will de-risk your strategy and save you a lot of time. And the next step when we're talking about policies is to get into the underwriting process. To unlock the underwriting process, we apply for the application. The application does not make anything certain or guaranteed. Really, all the application does is unlock the underwriting process. So thinking about insurance from a bird's eye view, they are insuring your body. So we need to ensure that your health is tracked and measured, and that will gauge what type of premium that you get inside your policy. Your premium rating is going to drive how much you're going to pay on premiums. So if you're in good health, things will be more efficient, but if you're in bad health, that will be less efficient. It's important to note here too, if you're in bad health, you could use a business partner or someone in your family to help you get into a policy without necessarily using your specific body as the vehicle for the policy design. The policy will function the same way. We're just using that person as the insured while you will act as the payer and owner of that policy. And when you're undergoing your medical process, you'll do a blood and urine sample. And depending on what type of policy you're going to get and how big the policy is, you'll do a blood and urine sample and you'll go through some medical exam and questions. And all that process will dictate what type of premium rating you're going to get. So I hope you enjoyed this quick breakdown. Like I said, policy design and implementation is everything. Some of the advantages that we talked about when we went through this policy is not going to be the same way if we're using different products or using different providers. That's why it's so important to find an agent that is aligned with your values and understands what you're trying to do and when, and then you could create the proper policy design that will help you reach your end state faster. If you have any questions, this is truly my passion. I love this stuff. It has completely changed me and my family's life forever. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at Generational Growth Co, and I hope to talk to you soon.